Pinfluencer, the podcast for digital product experiences.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Pinfluencer podcast, your source for insights into the world of product information management. I'm your host, Alex Semrl, Managing Director of Content Serve US. And today we're diving into a fascinating topic, data-driven conversions, how generative AI enhances the buying experience and reduces returns. Joining us is a returning guest, Vinny Maurici. Vinny is Vice President of Data Engineering at Object Edge. Welcome back to the show, Vinny.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, can you share a little bit more regarding your insights on how generative AI is reshaping the landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, what we've seen over the better part of a year, really year and a half, is AI as a whole has essentially taken part in some way, shape, or form within every enterprise construct within a business, right? It doesn't matter whether you're in the supply chain side, you're in the merchandising side, the sales side, even HR and accounting. AI is being integrated everywhere simply because of how powerful the tool sets are. I think large language models have built a system by which it creates a connective tissue between all of my different operations within a business that these guys can now leverage and enhance every aspect of the business. I don't really view AI as one thing. It's really a connective tissue between all processes and supply chains. Now, specific to where I focus on, which if you look at B2B manufacturing or distribution, you have the concept of merchandising, you have the concept of product onboarding, bringing vendor information onto your own website or punch out catalog or static catalogs that you may be presenting to your customers. And I think it has created this massive overhaul in terms of how we fundamentally can manage that information. Back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I mean only about a year ago, you had two options. You were either curating all of the data yourself and content yourself, which can lead to fat fingering of information, can create inconsistency, required a lot of cost, or you could put the onus on the vendors and create a vendor portal and an exclusive vendor portal. You say, you have to do this. You have to bring on your data into my data set. And in doing so, on paper, it sounds great. I put the onus onto my suppliers and vendors to bring on the data, but in reality, they have to manage all of their various distributors, and they themselves would have to hire on an army of folks, and they themselves are going to be massaging data. So you essentially, whether you're curating it yourself or forcing the vendors to do it, you've still created a model that doesn't really scale properly, and it has a lot of issues with errors that could be embedded into the data that you might not see. So when you look at a customer experience, all of a sudden you're going to have a model that is inconsistent. And when we talk about things like return rates, which is front and center for a lot of organizations because of how much money organizations spend on product returns, misaligned product data is one of the top reasons for that, whether it's a wrong digital asset, whether it's a wrong specification, those will lead to higher returns. And with AI, you're now able to go straight to the source. And when I say source, I'm talking straight to the product data sheet, straight to engineering information, straight to the truth of a product, and then create a model to extract that data into a merchandising opportunity. And when we do that, you're going to create a lot more accurate and consistent results in your data simply because you're removing that human factor.
Yes, absolutely. And so generative AI not only streamlines content creation, but also plays a really, really pivotal role in reducing returns by ensuring that customers have access to the right, accurate, consistent product information that they need in order to make that purchase for them. How do you see businesses integrating generative AI into their existing processes and into their digital ecosystems today?
Yeah, so as I alluded to, you've got AI essentially a part of every aspect of the business. not only merchandising and supply chain, but even HR and accounting and sales. Now, where I do see some shift in how we viewed things in 2023 to 2024 is in 2023, it was a lot of just playing around with AI, right? There was a lot of pilots occurring. There were a lot of little internal projects. How could this help us with policy design, for example, with content creation? But it wasn't really operationalized. We didn't actually see the scalability or the enhancements that AI could do to an enterprise. I think that is starting to change in the latter half of 2024. I think you're going to see a lot more organizations start building core fundamentals in how they run their business, with AI essentially being an enhancement of employees. Like, we view employees as the people that do the great work within a business to make it run, to make it profitable. AI is going to be a new concept, but a concept that is going to complement your employees to help run the business. And so we're really looking at quite an interesting time in the future. I mean, we're only at the precipice of it right now.
And you mentioned, Vinny, the enhancement to the way that employees can work and interact with data. I'm just wondering if you could speak to as well any of the processes of change management that companies can institute and facilitate within their organizations to help employees embrace the benefits of AI.
Yeah, change management is always an interesting topic because we've talked about change management well before we ever talked about AI. Even introducing something like a PIM system into an enterprise creates a lot of change because you're already looking at a model by which the employees are working in free form types of we call them offline tools. They're working in Excel spreadsheets. They're building, InDesign templates to create brochures. Nothing was ever connected and governed in a way. So PIM in of itself created this big change management gap that we always needed to educate our customers on by saying, well, take a step back, take a breath. This is actually a really good thing. It's going to make your lives easier and more effective and more efficient. And I think you can draw a parallel from that to how AI is going to be embedded. I think you have a lot of, doomsdayers that's going to take everybody's jobs, as opposed to being an accelerant to actually making jobs more efficient, faster, at higher scale, because higher scale is going to lead to a bigger, better business for your employees and for your business as a whole, because the customers are going to be getting a better experience. So change management is a delicate subject because AI is so new. We don't know how it's necessarily going to change our lives in the long run, but it's about understanding what we're trying to accomplish with it right now, how that's going to affect the teams working with it, and doing it in kind of baby steps and keeping everybody involved in the process of embedding AI. What we don't want to do is just say, hey, we're introducing this new AI process, and then just plop it down in front of the people who are working, because then they get feared. They tend to tighten up. And again, that's the same thing that occurred back, 6-7 years ago when we were first doing PIM implementations, and we realized that, hey, you need to keep the business involved throughout the whole time so that they can understand it, and then they can adopt it, and then you realize all the positive effects and the outcomes of it.
Understood. Yeah. And, in addition to improving efficiency, reducing returns, how do you see generative AI shaping the future of product information management specifically?
Yeah, so this is where it gets really fun, because I had put this earlier. I had talked about, the two ways of onboarding product content. One was curating yourself, one was vendor portal, but even designing how we interact with product data. If we look at more of the customer facing things, like when we go onto a website and we need to browse and search, whether it's in B2B or retail or direct to consumer, it applies to everyone, right? I'm going to build a site that is easily navigable. It's going to have all the faceted search so my customers can come in and narrow down to the exact products that they want to purchase. It'll have all of the relevant specification data. And in the past, what we had to do And what we continue to do is leverage things like library sciences to say, hey, what's the most intuitive categorization structure? What's the most intuitive or most important attributes around these categories? And what are the validation rules to make the normalized values look good and clean and consistent to the customer? Now,
Mhm.
forever, and even to today, we would create that with amazing and talented information architects and data analysts. And the same thing for product onboarding. You can always introduce human error to that. You can always introduce different analysts with different best practice principles, for example. AI essentially amalgamates the best practice for how to create a really, really great user experience, and it won't break the bank. If you want to build a 5,000 category catalog worth of products, and you want to go towards an endless aisle model, that used to be a dream for many folks that was unrealized because of how much investment and how much cost it would be to build out that many categories and attributes and validation rules and then onboard. All of a sudden, AI has created a level playing field. You used to have only the top tier organizations that were able to spend tens of millions of dollars on doing that kind of investment. Now it's a
Mm.
fraction of that to build out those category structures. It's a pretty exciting time.
Understood, and great examples that you shared there. For businesses that are looking to harness the power of generative AI to enhance their conversions, what are some of the key best practices based on your experience that you could recommend for successful implementations? And, I think it would just make sense also to mention the importance of data quality here
Yeah.
as well, making sure that you're operating with the right standards of data quality to supply to AI as a basis for moving forward as well.
I think the core here is that AI is not a tool or a product within itself. As I mentioned, it's almost like
Mm.
complement to an individual and a person, right? It should be able to orchestrate what we want within the business, not be the thing or the tool, because I think you'll set yourself up for failure. So, at least from my side, one of the
Yeah.
first things that I'm educating enterprises on is you still need these tools that enable you to do various things, right? Whether it's content serve as a PIM, where we're going to say, hey, I need to structure an organized way of managing my product information that will then get syndicated downstream to, let's say, a commerce platform, or is calling upstream to an ERP or connecting to a dam or using its own dam, or maybe there's multiple different sources coming through. All of a sudden, AI is going to make the interoperability between all these systems really
Mm.
fluid and a lot easier to manage than I think in the past. But you still need these tools. ERPs are designed for really great purposes to pick and ship and to source parts and to manage inventory and to do all of those great things. A PIM is designed so that I can manage product data and syndicate it out in my various ways, either downstream internally or externally. And then same thing with a commerce platform. These tools aren't going away, and we don't want to view them as going away. We want to view AI as enhancing and accelerating each one of those various tools so that the business can work better. I think most of the time when people think of all these tools within the enterprise, they think of technical debt, they think about how they haven't
Mm.
leveraged a lot of these tools to their maximum capabilities. And I totally agree. In fact, a lot of the times when we walk in and we have these data strategy engagements that we tend to do with organizations, we talk about how you need to be leveraging the tools to their maximum potential. And that was a very hard thing to do in the past. I think with AI, you have the ability to do that a lot easier.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering off of the back of that, a lot of B2B businesses today are trying to incorporate some of the trends that are going on the B2C side of things. And maybe also utilizing AI in that capacity can help to accelerate some of those changes towards adopting some of those trends as well. Um, all right. And then maybe one additional question for you is, is there any industry segment that you've seen that has really tried to adopt AI more fervently than any other industry or any other target segment based on your experience, or is it more applicable towards all of the industry segments today?
Oh, that's a good question. I think every industry segment is definitely investing in AI. I think though, and this
Hmm.
my opinion I think goes a little bit against the grain here because what happened was um, Sorry, I keep doing these history lessons, but I think it creates some good context, right? We saw
Yeah.
retail with more of their money and investment back in the early 2000s really go all in on commerce and design of that. And you had
Yeah.
B2B kind of, not even a fast follow, kind of a slow follow afterwards, trying to play catch up. And part of that was simply because of the revenue and profit margin differences. And you just had retail really investing in that
Yes.
consumer-based model, whereas B2B just didn't follow that line. So that's where the digital commerce space accelerated for them. In the AI world, I think all of a sudden you have retail and you have some of these larger organizations with really, really large and bloated, content management teams that may actually be slower to move than a B2B organization, which from the standpoint of how their team is designed is just more nimble because there's
Mm.
fewer of them. So if you're more nimble and you're able to integrate AI into your processes that haven't been developed over 25 years, you're able to then jump ahead and really leverage AI. And on top of that, B2B tends to have more complex products, right? So more complexity
Yes.
requires maybe an additional secret ingredient like AI to create a really great shopping experience. Whereas on the consumer side and more the retail side, we may not need that depth of knowledge on a specific product that we're purchasing. So there's a few areas here, and I think there's a really awesome opportunity for B2B right now.
Brilliant. And, is there one potential future development that you could share with all of our guest listeners today that you think could be upcoming for AI, for generative AI, that could be applicable for businesses as well, just to keep on their radar?
Yeah, I had mentioned before you have this idea of onboarding products at scale, designing data
Yes.
models at scale. But I think, and I mentioned it only briefly, this whole concept of interoperability, because half the battle has always been integrations. And it's a very IT centric thing. And I don't want to just focus on
Mm.
that because it is powering the business. But if you ever got into the nitty gritty of why certain aspects of the business are not functioning as efficiently as they could be, a lot of the times you can point to it and say, well, the integrations between systems, the interoperability between systems just are not as fluid and as quick as they should
Mm.
be. And so even at an anecdotal level, even if you're listening to this podcast and you're in business, you don't really know much about IT, you don't know integrations, you probably know that a lot of your team members, the root cause of why they use Excel spreadsheets or why they use offline tools is because they don't easily have the ability to grab and manipulate data through some integrated enterprise system, right? They just do it. It's easier. It's easier to copy and paste something into an Excel, massage it, and then upload it to some system,
Yes.
right? AI will help improve so that I can bring in my enterprise systems that are great at what they do, and then
Mhm.
still allow the flexibility of my business users to do all of the things they need on the product information, for example.
Brilliant. Yeah, that would be a great development to see, actually, and a huge potential impact. That's about it for time today. Thank you very much, Vinny. Really appreciate you joining us once again, sharing these valuable insights into the transformative power of generative AI in the realm of product information management. Really appreciate your time and expertise.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, and I want to extend my gratitude as well to all of our listeners tuning in today. Thank you very much. And until next time, stay tuned for more insights into the world of PIM and digital transformation. Thanks for joining, everyone.
This was Pimfluencer, the podcast for digital product experiences. More information can be found on www.contentsurf.com.